I'm Brooke Baldwin. You're watching CNN. Thank you for being with me. Moments ago, the White House hit back on this. Anger, outcry, frustration at these town halls across the country for Republican members of Congress. But is it for real? Or is it for show? Let me first show you what President Trump tweeted in reaction to some of this. Quote, the so-called angry crowds in home districts of some Republicans are actually, in numerous cases, planned out by liberal activists. Sad. Once again, the White House press secretary clarified the president's position.
Is he suggesting this is manufactured anger, that this is not real anger and real concern?
Yeah, thanks. I think there's a hybrid there. I think some people are clearly upset. But there is a bit of professional protester manufactured base in there. But there are people that are upset. But I also think that when you look at some of these districts and some of these things, it is not a representation of a member's district or an incident. It is a loud group, small group of people disrupting something in many cases for media attention. No offense. It's just, I think that necessarily, just because they're loud, doesn't necessarily mean that there are many. And I think in a lot of cases, that's what you're seeing.
Does the President doubt that there's real anger and real concern out there beyond just a few loud agitators, that there's real concern that people may lose their...
But they won't. But see, I think that's a false narrative. And I don't... The President's been very clear. Look, you have to look at what our healthcare system is right now. In so many counties around our nation, we've gone down to one provider.
So you think they're making it up?
No, I'm not that making it up. But what I'm getting at is I think that there is a lot of blurring of the facts. And the reality is that some people aren't on Obamacare. They're on an employer-based system. They're on Medicaid. They're receiving their benefits through Medicare because of their age. And so that they're nothing, you know, they have no problems. The reality is that they are losing their health care. But they're losing it under Obamacare because the exchanges are collapsing on themselves. Carriers are pulling out. Premiums are going up. And access is going down.
Let's begin with this point at the White House. Sarah Murray was in that briefing. She joins me now. And so you can understand why John Karl pressed Spicer on precisely that, because of the president's words in that tweet, organized by liberal activists, suggest being planted, paid, organized to be there. And so we needed an answer.
Well, that's absolutely right, Brooke. We did want an answer about how the White House is viewing these outcries that we're seeing among members of Congress at the town halls, and we got sort of mixed reviews. They seem to believe that some of it is legitimate and some of it is manufactured, but what we're hearing from our reporters who are going to these town halls is that there are people who really are concerned about what happens when you peel away Obamacare and what the replacement plan is going to be. We don't have a good idea of what that replacement plan is. Today, the president said he will sort of move forward with unveiling that likely in early to mid-March. But part of the reason we're seeing this concern is, you know, Sean Spicer pointed out that there are flaws in the current healthcare system. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. He said there are concerns about affordability, about accessibility, but the concerns among some voters in these districts are you going to replace it with nothing? Does that mean that I'm not going to be able to afford, you know, healthcare in the private sector either? At least under Obamacare, I'm assured to have some kind of coverage, even if it is a premium that's going up. And so I think that's, you know, a question we're still waiting to see from President Trump and from his Republican allies on the Hill, Brooke.
About to talk to my panel about all the points you're making, Sarah. But before I let you go, let's talk about Mexico. I know Sean Spicer was also asked, you know, is this a cleanup mission for Tillerson, Secretaries Tillerson and Kelly today? Why are they there?
Whew, to be a fly on the wall of these meetings between the Secretary of State, Homeland Security, they're meeting with the Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto, as well as a number of other Mexican officials there. And you can guess the number of topics they will have to go over. But I think one of the big ones is going to be this immigration crackdown we're seeing here in the United States. There are plans to send immigrants back to Mexico, whether they're from there or not. There are also a lot of questions about who could be targeted. That is certainly going to be a topic of conversation in these meetings. And you would imagine, Brooke, that yet again the border wall is going to be a topic of conversation. We still have not heard from the White House how they are going to pay for that, but Mexico has made it pretty clear that they are opposed to the wall and they have no plans to pay for it.
Sarah Murray, thank you so much at the White House. Let's talk about all these protests and town halls with CNN political commentator Mary Catherine Ham, CNN special correspondent Jamie Gangel, and CNN senior political reporter Nia Malika Henderson. Ladies, good to have you on. And Jamie, let me just turn to you on the town halls, on the way Sean Spicer responded. I mean, even if there are some people who organize this, how dangerous is it to paint with such a broad brush these constituents?
I think what was very important was three little words that Sean Spicer used. He said a bit of when he was talking about the activists. Is it possible that there are a few activists at some events? Of course, yes. But when you look at these things, as Sarah Murray just reported, when our reporters on the ground go to these events, these do not appear, by and large, to be activists. There are going to be some town halls tonight. I was looking at Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas's Facebook page. He had to change his location 2 or 3 times because so many people want to come to these town halls. And I'm told that they expect that town hall to be big and loud. So, but these are not, you know, for the most part, paid activists were there.
A bit of. Got
you.
A bit of. Mary Catherine, just following up, you know, and listen, I say kudos for these Republican members of Congress to stand up there. I mean, they were elected by some of these people. This is their job to answer tough questions, and I realize the questions are really, really tough. At the same time, though, you know, we remember from all the Tea Party activists, the roles were reversed not too long ago in what was that, 2009 and 2010, where you had the opposite, you know, member of Congress on the stage, and Tea Party activists and the Republicans at the time were saying, go to those town halls, speak up. And now some Republicans are saying, deuces, we don't want to go.
Right. You know, look, I think Democratic congressmen at the time, you know, when roles were reversed, were, among other things, called them mobs, extremist mobs, brown shirts at one point, and astroturfed. I don't think that is the right tone to take with people who probably are largely your actual constituents. There will be people who come in from other districts. There will be people who are paid activists. But these people, their concerns should not be discounted, and you should address them. I think Dave Bratt, actually in Virginia, did quite a good job at a very rowdy town hall of having a back and forth, taking 30-something questions. That's not a bad showing, and it actually gives people a feeling that they're having an outlet and they're talking to you and they're being heard. He also, of course, part of this Tea Party movement that took out a Republican leader at one point, so he's pretty comfortable in a boisterous sort of grassroots area. But I think facing those folks and answering some questions is great. There are some diminishing returns if it gets too rowdy because your actual constituents aren't hearing your answers. But I think that's the right approach.
Agree. And by the way, we'll talk to a Republican member of Congress who's been on one end, and we'll talk to some of these protesters through the next 2 hours. It's important to hear from both. Nia, to you, and let me just set up this next question for viewers if you don't know what's going on. So there's news today, huge piece of news, questions about whether President Trump is on the verge of lifting some guidance from the Obama administration, specifically on transgender students. Former President Obama required public schools to allow transgender students to use bathrooms that match his or her chosen gender. The White House now saying it is not a federal issue. This is a states' rights issue. Here is Sean Spicer.
There's no daylight between anybody, between the president, between any of the secretaries. I think there's been some discussion between the timing of the issuance and recommendations or between the exact wording. But as far as the conclusions go, I've made this clear, and the president's made it clear throughout the campaign, that he is a firm believer in states' rights and that certain issues like this are not best dealt with at the federal level.
Nia, why tackle this as one of their first big actions, and what do you think the potential fallout could be here?
You know, I think ultimately this is a case. There's obviously a case now that's before the Supreme Court right now that's based on this guidance that Obama issued in May around transgender students, specifically a transgender student in Virginia. Who knows if it's going to be kicked back now because of this order essentially being rolled back. But you ultimately feel like this is going to be something that is decided by the Supreme Court. And this has been something that has been bubbling up certainly at the state level for for a couple of years now. You saw what happened in North Carolina, obviously, and them losing some money, the NBA finals, for instance, because people were so, corporations were upset with the way that went down in North Carolina. So this is going to be a big issue, I think. And a lot of people, especially on the left, see this as a civil rights issue, and we obviously see that the Donald Trump administration and his allies there see it as a very different issue in terms of thinking that it's about states' rights. It really, I think, is an echo of the same fight we saw around gay rights, around gay marriage. The thinking initially was that this was a states' rights issue, and you saw people in different states essentially sue, and it made its way to the Supreme Court. So you imagine that that is ultimately where it's going to be. But it is interesting that it is bubbled up to the to-do list of this administration so early on, and it looks like they are coming down firmly on the conservative side, essentially saying, listen, this is something that should be decided by the states.
Jamie, let me turn to you and ask about your reporting on, Sean was asked about any sort of micromanaging among cabinet member staff. There were reports they wanted to pick and choose. They deny it. What do you know?
Right. Well, he was asked about this a couple of times, and his defense was these are political appointees, that you should pick people who are politically aligned with the president. The problem with that is, if you look at history, during campaigns, there's a lot of criticism. Barack Obama would never have picked Hillary Clinton to be his Secretary of State. The other thing that we're hearing a lot of from people who were critical of Trump is they're not filling these jobs, and there are a lot of very qualified people out there who would come and serve, who would support the agenda, and they're not being taken advantage of. So the question is this still thin skin, that he's concerned about the criticism? Or is there another agenda? Is there, we saw last week that Rex Tillerson wanted Elliott Abrams, who had been a critic for his number 2. We were told that Reince supported it, that Jared Kushner supported it,
that it was Steve Bannon.
But that Steve Bannon nixed it. So are there other agendas at play here?
Nia, to you on the Democratic National Committee. We know they're picking their leader on Saturday. The president has already weighed in on this. Let me just read President Trump's tweet. Quote, "One thing I will say about Congressman Keith Ellison in his fight to lead the DNC is that he was the one who predicted early that I would win." You laugh, and the congressman has said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! I'm not in cahoots with President Trump. If this is some sort of air quote endorsement, what's going on here?"
Donald Trump is right. Keith Ellison did predict on ABC one Sunday that he could end up winning. He could win the nomination. He could win the presidency. The reporters around the table laughed, and he was right. Listen, I think all of the folks who are campaigning to lead the DNC are trying to figure out how to go at Trump, how to be Trump's foil, essentially, and also put forward a vision for the Democratic Party that opposes this president, but also advances some ideas that speak to those key groups that Democrats did so poorly among. So I think this is just the kind of going back and forth. You've seen Tom Perez do the same thing, not necessarily on Twitter, but certainly be vocal in his opposition to Trump, because everyone, these Democrats really are trying to figure out how to harness this anger that you're seeing on the progressive left, and shock, right, that they lost this campaign back in November. So I think that's what you see, and we'll of course have that debate tonight on our air among, I think it's 8 of them who are going to be there debating who should lead the DNC.